Well, good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you might be. Excited to have everybody here for today's Scaled Sports webinar. We're going to talk a little B2B. We're going to talk a little premium sales with our friends from the Nets, as well as our CEO of Skaled Consulting, Jake Dunlap. Quick intro, my name is Ben Pincus. I'm the head of sports strategy here with Skaled. I've been here for a little while after spending a little over a decade in with sports teams and leagues on that side of it. And the reason we're doing this, for those of you who may have joined us yesterday, the goal here is twofold. The first one is we're here to provide hopefully a little bit of a different perspective than you might be used to in the past, with a focus on people who are in the industry, like our superstars from the Nets. People who have been in it and out of it, Jake and myself, and just give you that different view a little bit. The second goal is we want to give everybody here a tangible view on here's an action item you can go do starting today. That's the main goal. So with that, you can get as interactive as you want. So the goal here is to get started. There is a chat function. If you haven't, I see it's already started a little bit. Feel free to go in there, type your name, what organization you're from, sort of introduce yourself to everybody. And then there's also a Q&A function. So feel free to send those in as we go. I promise I will try to get to them. I do have my own content, I promise, but feel free to throw those in. We'll get to them when we can. So with that, I'm going to introduce the crew who are going to drop some knowledge on you today. First, starting with Jake Dunlap, who is the founder and CEO of Skaled Consulting. So Jake's had a long, successful career in sports or in sales as a VP of sales for No Wait, which was actually bought by Yelp, the head of sales and customer success for Chartbeat. And also for those of you who are researching your own companies or ones you might want to work for in the future, he was the VP of sales at Glassdoor, which actually was bought for over $1 billion back in 2018. But the good news is Jake does know this industry as well. Started his career back with the Tampa Bay Devil Rays and the Phoenix Coyotes. Really wanted to give himself the biggest challenge possible.
Man. No Rays, the Devil Rays, man.
Yep. Wanted to give himself the biggest challenge possible to start his career out. So Jake, appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, guys.
And for now, we'll move over to our crew from the Nets. So when everyone thinks of Brooklyn, you know, Jake loves hip hop music. I know he can agree with this. Everyone thinks of Jay-Z or they think of Biggie, but more people need to think about Ross Grill. Like, Ross has spent over 11 years with the organization, literally taking the team from the New Jersey Nets to the Brooklyn Barclays Center Islanders partnership to the current version of BSE Global now. And I'm not going to get too into it because if anybody's looking, there's a great YouTube video of Ross giving a talk to his alma mater, Washington University in St. Louis. So feel free he goes into a lot more detail. So Ross, not sure if you knew that existed, but it's out there.
I didn't know that was out there. I don't know if I should be scared or
not. He's currently the VP of Premium Hospitality Sales and Service, where he oversees the team that's responsible for all premium experiences, loge boxes, courtside seats, all those experiences that go along with everything that BSE has to offer. And last, but certainly not least, coming to us from Monmouth University, the same school as the Cowboys, Miles Austin, the former Team USA women's soccer captain, Christine Rampone. It's the Brooklyn Nets Director of Premium and Inside Sales, Cam Nichols. So Cam spent a little bit of time away from BSE. He actually spent some time across the river at MSG, but has built a really impressive resume over the last five-ish years at BSE. Spent some time in the groups world before moving over to the premium team, where he, in 1 year, did about $1.5 million in new business. And this is pre-Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. So some impressive results as a top rep, and now leading multiple levels of sales talent. So Cam, thanks for joining us today.
Hell of an intro. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. So want to start with, you know, we talked about this a little bit previously, but one of the things that I've loved, and I actually posted about this on LinkedIn a little while ago, was the way that, well, this is not an ideal situation, the way that teams and leagues have come together to do Zoom sessions together and share information with each other and you know, find ways to get creative has been awesome. So, you know, Ross, I'll throw it to you first, but would love to get your perspective on what it is that you're seeing in the industry that's kind of piqued your interest, and kind of what's shaping the route that you're taking with the team at BSE and with the Nets.
Yeah, good question. I think, like you said, no one's really been through this before, so anybody that claims they're kind of like an expert in this situation is kind of full of it, right? I've been doing sales and service and in sports for 10 years. I've been through a lockout on the NBA side, but it's nothing quite like this. So putting that brain power together, coming up with solutions together is key. So what we've done is we've had a lot of conference calls and Zoom video meetings and what have you with a ton of different teams, and whether it's in basketball, I've done it, in the NBA, we've done it with NHL teams, done it with MLB, NFL teams, and it's nice because we're fortunate enough that we're in a market or in a industry where we're not necessarily competitors, right? Where I can talk to somebody over at the Rays, for example, or I can talk to somebody at the Eagles, and we're not really competing for the same customer. Some industries may not have that exact, been able to do that, but sports are pretty much able to do that outside of us, maybe with the Garden and the Devils. And I think during a time like this, we've had those chats with people over at Prudential Center because it's we're all in this together, and that's it's actually been very, very helpful. So some of the things that have been kind of done across the board, everyone's been really fan friendly from what I've seen. That's a kudos to. I can speak specifically about BSE's ownership group. It's extremely thoughtful in everything that they've done and we've done. You've seen Joe Ty in the news for donating tons of PPE across, not even just New York, but into Detroit as well. So, it's really amazing to have an ownership group like that cares about the fans. We'll be rolling out, every team has been rolling out their refund policy or credit policy over the last couple weeks. And we'll be rolling ours out really shortly. And, what I can say is it's super fan friendly. And I'm really it's nice to be a part of an organization that cares about the fan. I think people remember what you do for them during this time. I think that's really important, whether that's in sports or any other industry. If you go to a restaurant, right, and you have a bad experience, you're probably not going back to that restaurant for a while if the service is bad. It's the same thing now, amplified by like 100. So if you're treating a customer poorly right now, imagine how you're going to treat them when times are good. So this is the time to make sure you're doing right by the fans, being super service oriented. And I think for us too, we're really focused on retaining our clients first and foremost, more than new business right now. I think that's really important. I think everything we're doing is around our current clients and retention and making sure that they feel really comfortable. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to be about them feeling like they're really safe whenever we do come back to business. That's going to be the forefront of everything. And I'm not just saying that. Like, if you don't feel safe coming to an arena, you don't have a business. So we're going to make sure we do everything possible to make sure that safety is number one and the fans' experience is right there alongside it.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And Cam, on your side, from a current client standpoint or a current conversation standpoint, what have those been sounding like for you and for your team?
Well, they started, and they continue to be extremely empathetic, right? Like, this is an unprecedented time. I feel like we've used that phrase a little much at this point, but it's a fact, right? There's, like, to Ross's point, there's no blueprint for this, right? And we had a lot of mojo going, right? We're close to the playoffs and people are getting excited for hoops. And then all of a sudden, on top of that, right before actually all of this happened, we had like 3 shows with Celine Dion. So like the vibe was just like incredible. And then, this happened, it's uncontrollable. And the first piece is empathy, right? We want to make sure that families are safe, people are doing well. What's the status? Are you in New York City or in New Jersey, or did you travel somewhere else to a family member's house? Really just like connect with them on like a personal level. And we could talk more about, that as the time progresses. But we started with empathy, right? But then it's like, how many times can I send a note or call and just say, hey, how are you? How you doing? What's new? And it's like, hey, Cam, like I'm still good, all is well. And as much of a jolly individual as you are, and I love to chat, like, I've got a job or I've got kids, right? Like, all these superhero mom and dads that are dealing with homeschooling and young kids and old kids and everything in between. Like, it's a lot, right? So like, what value can we bring to them when we put in a touch point, right? So we first started, we took the parent route. We gathered some information on some fun free tools right? For parents to put in front of their kids, like a live webcam of the Statue of Liberty, or the New York Zoo, or whatever it may be. Just something like as a touch point, like, hey, I know you got 2 kids at home. Here's some fun stuff that's worked for me and my kids. We have a couple of reps with some children, and that was like wildly successful. Like, any of those free pieces of content, I mean, is a grand slam, especially to keep children busy during the workday, which, I know, Jake, you have some kids and stuff and so on. So that was a huge plus. We're fortunate we're in the arena business. So it's not just, Nets basketball. We're responsible for an upwards of 160 plus events throughout the year. So like Michelle Obama was at our building last year, and actually again this year for Oprah's event, which was incredible. And now she's got a live, event, or a documentary on Netflix. It's like, hey, let me reach out to all of my Michelle Obama suite buyers and all the people that attended Oprah and say, hey, just as a heads up, let's shoot this. Let's shoot the, SHIT here for a second. Let's talk about what happened, during that documentary. Did you have a chance to catch it? That there's some common ground, and there's a reason for me to be catching up with you. So,
Yeah.
Just trying to get creative with the approach, and just understanding, these people are going through equally, going through tough times, and we have to just be there.
Totally. And Jake, I know that part of the different approach is going to resonate with you. When you talk about adding value, right? That's looking at how sports teams can do that differently in the B2B space, right? The idea of, hey, you don't sell a suite, you don't sell a ticket, right? You sell X, right? This is the way to look at it. If you can just share some of those thoughts as to the way to change that approach.
Yeah, well, I think like now, I mean, like what Cam and Ross are getting at is, it's like, well, what are we selling? It's like, what are we going to sell? And I think that can be, I think probably the most difficult part about a lot of this for me. A lot of sales teams, especially what I've seen across sports, is everyone went into shell mode, which was nobody's buying. We can't talk about sales. We can't talk about anything. And what we're seeing now is that even though the product that we sell may look like a playoff now or whatever it looks like, like with the NHL, there are industries that are doing really well, right? And there are industries that are actually thriving right now. And so I think for a lot of sales organizations now, at least, when we're working with a lot of Ross, his team, other teams, it's the conversation like, guys, look, you still have maybe 10%, 15% of your clients or new people where you can start to at least say, hey, look, when we do understand what it is, here's the value we think we can add to you. And like, here's the impact we think we can have. So I think a lot of teams, now is the time that if I was, in leadership role, thinking about my sales strategy, I would just start to say, hey guys, who are the industries, and can we have a little bit of a business conversation with them? Not full on closing them deals, but saying, look, we're going to be coming back. You guys are doing well. Here's some different types of ways we might be able to help you. Let's start to think about what that might look like. So I think that's the one thing I'd say, like, here we are 2-3 months into this, that I think it's time. I think that you can start to have those conversations, but you got to be smart and know your buyer and know what their industry is going through.
Yeah, I agree. I think what this has done is it's forced the idea of research and understanding who our clients might be and what's going on. Not just what do we have that might fit with them, but what do we have and why does it make sense? And if their business does X, Y, and Z, and that's what's going on in their industry right now, I need to know that, because if you're trying to sell these high dollar value products, you can't do it. First, you can't really do it over the phone anymore anyway, but you can't do it if you don't have a true business purpose. And so, Ross, I'll throw it back to you. Right? What is the conversation, the coaching like with your team right now, as far as the research they're doing, the way they're preparing for having those new business conversations?
Yeah, I think, you don't often get this amount of like downtime where you don't also need to be full on selling, right? As a seller, this is almost like it's almost good in a way that you can fully prepare for going out to battle, right? Like you never have this much time to fully prepare, at least I think. So, what we focus on, right? There's 3 levels of kind of decision makers or what have you that we really focus on, right? And that's like your executives, your admins, and from the premium side, right? Who's going to handle the tickets? Who's going to handle the catering? So who are those people that we're going to have to touch it's really going to focus on making sure that we know everybody at the company so we can multi-thread later, right? Like getting prepared to multi-thread. So who are people in that level? The next level up, who are the end users, right? So in our world, again, like who are the people that are actually using our product for sports? Who are the people that are actually entertaining? Who are the people that are bringing clients out? Who are your rainmakers? Who are the people that are fully touching your product and using it? We got to know a lot of those, right? If you're just going out to a law firm and you're just going to the managing partner and you're going to the head of marketing, you're going to have a tough time. You need that one person to just like say yes. And then of course they're going to ask all the other partners, right? So we can right now, we can research 20, 30, 40 partners at that firm and find out everything about them, start teeing up conversations. Hey, I saw you like to play golf like X, right? I saw that you're your daughter's on a huge Ariana Grande fan. We're also fortunate that we have data, right? Like tons of data. So we have built Tableau reports where if you buy a ticket, we associate that ticket with the company that you're at. And even if you're not like connected to the domain, we have interns that'll go through your name and say, okay, he works for this company. He's this level. We'll tie him to that or her to that. So that's the next level. And then the third level, that executive budgetary support, right? So who's the president, who's the CEO, who's the CMO, that's going to make the CFO, who's going to make those financial decisions, who's going to sign off at the end of the day. You have to have all that support. So if we can really fully prepare now for having all those different levels, we're going to be in amazing shape to go after all these companies with having 10, 15, 20 different support levels.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And you talk about the data, right? Everyone loves to have as much data as possible. You just talk a little bit more, and Cam, feel free to jump in as well, on how you're using the data that you have to try and make more informed decisions and sort of point your reps in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, not to be like super creepy, but when you purchase a ticket, right, we know who you are. And there's two ways to go about it, right? Like nobody wants to just receive an email from a sales rep like, hey, I saw you bought a ticket. Can I come by your seat and like sell you season tickets, right? Like, hey, like take me off your list immediately, unsubscribe. What are the Nets doing? This is why I don't want mobile tickets. This is why I don't like hard tickets. So,
come on, man, I love those Ticketmaster leads, Ross. Those are my favorite. Cam, I owe you guys a session where I'm going to sit and cold call with the team those Ticketmaster leads. I have not forgot.
100%. And, I mean, Jake, like you're still in our good graces because, not everyone knows this, but what was it, 1 week after you and Laura came by and did your training, our season ticket sales went through the roof. I think we sold 5,000 more season tickets year over year after. I mean, it was probably due to these guys, right? But
I mean, maybe that could have helped.
Probably due to these guys, but we're gonna put Jake Dunlap here, and then maybe Kyrie and
I like that
right below it. So it's how do you provide value when you're reaching out with these leads, right? And for us, we hired customer success managers, and they're focused, and they say, hey, I see you're coming out to the game, and you're forwarded a ticket. Let me bring you courtside. Do you have a special client coming out? Like if it's a really top client, we'll say, hey, what we do is we get custom jerseys for your client. What's their last name? We'll bring them a jersey. We'll say it's from you. Like you do that for one of their big clients, like you're in their good graces for a while. So that's just some of the things that we can do with our data that's really effective and provides value to our clients. It doesn't just seem like we're trying to sell them something.
And
sorry, go ahead, Cam.
No, I was just going to touch on what Ross was touching on earlier in regards to the personalization piece. Like, I'm not going to use the word creepy, but we'll get creepy. Like we'll take a look at some Facebooks. We'll take a look at some Instagrams. It's free information. Twitter's another big one, right? A lot of people, especially on LinkedIn, will include their, their Twitter handle rather. I'll go to their Twitter, see what, articles they're resharing or, things that they're favoriting or, what they're, posting in the comments section of Twitter. That's all invaluable information to us as we're looking to personalize the approach, especially on the new business front. Where we always look at it this way. There's 14 or 15 other professional sports team in our area, right? And to a degree, everything's similar, right? There's season tickets, there's partial plans, et cetera. Obviously, we believe in the value of our product and what we bring to the table. But how do we diversify our outreach so that it's different than the 1,500 other reps that are out there across the 15 teams wide? And that personalization piece and the gifting and just being smart and strategic about our outreach, in a nutshell, just breaks through the clutter.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that, and Cam, will call you out a little bit, but on your own LinkedIn profile, you have a little bio and it says something to the effect of, you want to create a personalized approach as it relates to sales. Right? We always talk about that, and it's super important. But curious, what does the personalized approach actually mean to you?
It's a great question. I think Jake was laughing at me because I went to go drink my water in the so.
My top seller right there.
Classic. I'm a little ditzy once in a while. No, the personalization piece, and even going through Jake's training and just what we teach our sales reps and what we work with, Ross and I work with the team together is I want to catch them right off. Like let's talk emails for a second, right? So I want to catch them in that first, 8 to 10 words in my sentence, right? Like I don't need a hope ball as well. I don't need any fluff. I want to get right into it because the odds are they're going to look at it in a couple of ways, right? The little pop-up and Outlook's going to come up in the bottom right-hand corner. They're going to see who it is. Maybe I reference a referral as an intro, or maybe it's I learned that they're a diehard Nets fan and Kyrie went for 54 points last night. That's the first thing that I bring up in the conversation. Like that is going to intrigue them to answer the email, right? Or at least read it, right? The statistics show that, your odds of getting a reply after that first email drop significantly. So I really want to catch their attention on the front end. We'll do some fun shock and awe, right? Like, and not like planned shock and awe with, we'll do some stuff with marketing, et cetera. But, perfect example is, one of my biggest clients, big ACC tournament, conference type guy, big Clemson fan, like goes to like the finals every single year, because they're always in it, at the championship, putting in like, an autograph helmet, from, one of the players or something, putting that out there with a personalized note, which nobody does anymore, to snag a meeting. Next thing you know, they're spending in upwards of 6 figures. So like, again, I'm not attributing the success of the sale just to that piece, but it's certainly a big part. And I'm also not saying that you need to start putting in some like line items for gifting and budgetary. However you go about it is how you go about it. But that little extra does go a long way. And that's why we want to know so much and why it's so important to us to know as much as we can about our potential clients and our current book of business.
I agree. And, the more that we get into this, right, the more questions around what does it look like when we come back and those sorts of things. We had a good question from Kim Bacon. She asked, like, do you expect to see a rise in demand for premium products post-COVID because of spacing in private areas as opposed to general stadium seating? Those conversations that they're having as far as the way that you're looking at the, I guess the unique selling proposition of the premium side of things.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. It's definitely come up, right? Like, do more people want to be in suites than ever before? Are you going to find that it's not just, private wealthy individuals and companies that want to be in suites? Now you're getting, just regular individuals, for, lack of a better word, that want to be in suites. That I don't know. I think your guess is as good as mine right now. But it will be interesting to see if that demand is a lot higher. I think me personally, right? Like if I'm going to an event and I have the opportunity to be in my private suite, I want that anyway, I think, but depending on the event, sometimes it's just like being close and low down, but I think that's a really good question. It's been discussed. What do you guys think? Jake, do you think like more people are going to be looking to be in these private areas than ever before?
Yeah, I think so, man. I think I think a lot of people, especially because, you're kind of controlling the group that you're with too, right? It's like, as opposed to doing like a big group as well. So I think it'll be interesting, right? It's like, because another reason you do suites too is client entertainment, right? Or, employee entertainment. Well, maybe it's like the employee group. So it's interesting as if my first reaction is like, yes, absolutely. But as I think it through, but I do think, look, people are going to have spent up, like non-spent budget. They're going to have these things because all their budget and teams and people are, you guys are working on your policy now. So I think so, man. I think just logically, the idea that you can be in you're not in close proximity with anybody that you don't know, I think logically makes sense that when sports really start to come back heavy, that will be an area to spend. But yeah, it's a good point you bring up too, Ross, that, it's still TBD though. Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point on the budgets, we had a couple companies over the last week hit us up, right? We're not being super proactive, but we've had companies come out of the woodwork a little bit and saying, hey, like, we've heard from a couple clients, like they want to do stuff when we come back. we have budget to use a lot of, right, fiscal years and June 30th, and we have to use it. Can we do something now? Like that's happening. So that June 30th date, like, is happening. And Cam calls me up. He's like, hey, like, can we put something together? It's like, yeah, like, let's figure it out. So that is happening. Like, there are budgets out there that are not just completely cut. Like, they want to do it. They know they're going to do it eventually. Some companies, I've heard from some major companies that entertain everywhere, they're like, we may be entertaining more. And that sounds crazy. I think it's, it's going to take some time, but I do think it will happen. And what's also cool is that on the concert side, when all these concerts do come back, all these artists haven't toured in 6 months, a year. They're working in the studios. From what I'm hearing is it's going to be a robust 2021 or 2022. Whenever that happens, whenever they're able to come back, they're all going to be bunched together. So the concert schedule could be unbelievable.
Yeah.
One other thing that I think is going to be interesting to look at is all of this work from home, right? The idea of people not being in the office together, they have to find ways to, employee morale and that kind of thing. I think the idea of staff outings coming together to do more things, I think it'll be bigger than ever, because if this does go that route and people are working from home a lot more, the impetus to get people together and make sure that people are connecting, I think that could be another area for companies to make sure that they're using it. It goes to the ROI, right? We've talked about this before, but as you look at the ROI, companies are going to look at that. How much are they using it for all of these different areas? And so, Cam, as you're approaching somebody, what's your thought around how to show that there will be ROI, or how to do that from a retention standpoint, Ross, with your team, making sure that people understand the value of the B2B purchase once they've made it, because it can be really substantial for a lot of companies.
It's a great question, Ben. I'd first like to start by saying, work from home during the day and then come to Barclays Center at night. I'm okay with that. No, but ROI is important. I think it has a place in the process. It's really on us to build the value to that point, right? And you could ask the questions, how much is a client worth to you, and things of that nature. But to Ross's point earlier, at the end of the day, there's also a value in people's time. Right. So like if I'm admin or if I am like executive, right, and, we don't have the infrastructure in place, I might think this is the greatest idea. I might understand that my client's worth $100,000. If I spend, $250,000 with the Barclays Center and I close 2.5 deals, I'm in the green. But like, there's also a value to time. So it's important for us to, not skip any steps and ensure that influencers are on board. Like your account executives, your best sellers, or your best associates or partners in the legal industry are going to maximize the space, and they understand the importance and the why and the how. Two, is the admin piece, right? So understanding who's going to track who's getting what, right? Long gone are the days of just, buying hospitality, giving out the tickets like this and calling it a day. Like, no, we need to make sure that we've got a plan in place. Who's getting access? Why are they getting access? What is this client potentially worth? What are the next steps, after, going to that event at Barclays Center, and having that all in place to make the executive's job that much easier to say yes is really, really important. So while I do think that question is intriguing and extremely important, all that needs to be in place before I get to a place where it's like, listen, let's talk about your bottom line for a second and how this tool in the shed is going to affect that number.
What I was going to add, Ben, is what I think is awesome about what Ross and Cam, and this is for all of you, most of the people out here are sellers or sales leaders, is, you guys are using right now to build that network to understand all those people so you can talk to all those people. And I feel like that's like the opportunity, like that's why LinkedIn, like every sales team should be just connecting with all these people. Then all those people see the content. And so, I really like what you guys, are saying about this idea of like using this time to get deeper. And now you've got 5 connections or 10 connections where you had 3 before. And like I love that law firm example. That's a perfect one. And I think if anyone on here is going to have a takeaway, that's my big takeaway, just that power right now of using this downtime. It's never going to happen again. Most likely, right? But like there most likely not for a long time will be an opportunity to where your boss isn't going to fire you for not hitting quota for 5 months, right? Like, so you can just purely build relationship, and that's what, Cam's talking about, all those great personal examples. Like, man, you're just building those bonds and touching new people. And I don't know if sports teams are taking enough advantage of that, other than just like, I don't know, just like doing some really basic stuff and not like these deep going wide and these deep, like, emotional connection.
Jake, no, you go, Ben. Go.
I was just gonna say, you kind of set me up there, Jake, to talk about kind of the digital presence piece of things. Like, where we can and should be spending our time. Doesn't matter if you are, in one of the biggest cities in the world, with the Brooklyn Nets. You're down in Gainesville. Shout out to my former Aspire colleague Brian Avolio down in Gainesville with the Gators. But you have an opportunity to connect and build, not just become somebody who has a lot of connections on LinkedIn, but somebody who has the ability to connect and engage and build a pipeline continually, develop yourself as somebody people want to listen to. So Jake, is sort of a leader in the space and a voice for the industry, can you just talk a little bit about what digital presence actually means? And we'll focus right now on the LinkedIn side of things.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I've talked to these guys about it too, in private conversations over the years, and for me, it's if you go to a team, you're going to be with that team. I mean, Ross and Cam, they've been in this community for years and years and years, and we work with a different sports team, not competitive with this team, right, in the New York area, and these guys have added 12,000 new connections in the last 3 months. So that's 12,000, and that's between 10 people, right? CEOs, VPs of sales, VPs of marketing. You're building a name for yourself in that community. And people might leave you for 2 or 3 years, and then you build the community, they come back. And so I feel like right now is like a really unique time, for if you're, selling from a sports standpoint, you're going to be in that community for a while. So start to build those relationships. And the best way to do it now is digitally, because we don't have the physical. So that's why I think LinkedIn right now is the most important place for teams to be spending, a big chunk of their time producing content, adding new people. So then once the season does hit, you've got that network built. And I just feel like it's just such a no-brainer to me, no matter what market you're in.
Yeah. Ross, kind of what are your thoughts on let's again stick with kind of the LinkedIn side right now with what you're pushing your team to do. Obviously we have to operate within what the organization deems appropriate and that sort of thing, but how are you pushing, your team to use the digital tools that they have at their disposal?
Yeah, I think you mentioned a good point, right? Like, I think if you're at a sports team specifically, for sure, right? Like, you're in the news, like you certainly don't want to say something that's going to end up on the front page of ESPN. Like, you're taught that your first day, whatever you work at a sports team, like, you don't want to be that person that says something that just it goes off the way that you didn't want to say it. So you also don't want to stifle somebody's creativity and be able to stifle somebody's voice, right? And there's that fine line. So what Cam and I spoke about is creating like a guidelines of things not to say, right? And it's not things to say. So I think that like if you have those, like if you just don't do these, like call it 5 things, right? It's just things of not to say. That gives somebody so much free reign, but they're like, oh, okay, cool. Like this fits. I'm told not to say that, but I can do this. I don't need to check in every time I want to say something, right? Because once you start telling somebody, hey, like, run it by me every time you have to post content, it just takes away from their voice. It takes away from what they want to do. They hear no. So I think that's like not the way to do it. But I think that way of just going about it, of saying like, here are the things you can't do. You can do everything else. I think that works. Other than that, table stakes are obviously, following all the companies that you are prospecting and your clients are, right? Like that's a no-brainer. Following sales leaders, right? I think it's funny, and another shout out to Jake, right? Like I brought in somebody for an interview, and I'm like, what are you doing to stay up to date on sales? And they say, oh, I follow some influencers on LinkedIn, and they mentioned like 3 people, and Jake was one of those. And when I told him that, Jake came in for training, he like couldn't believe it. Like Jake was some kind of celebrity, and I was like, yep, that's the kind of training that you would get here, and I thought that was kind of fun and interesting. And then our side, on the sales manager side, recruiting, right? Like it has changed the game of recruiting completely. I don't know if that's talked about enough, but like our job became so much easier finding good talent by looking up certain keywords, seeing their LinkedIn presence. And that's, that kind of leads me to, I guess, answer a question with a question. Jake and Ben, what are your thoughts right now of companies? You have this amazing talent pool now that has, unfortunately, because of the situation, might have been furloughed or let go, right? It's super, it just kind of sucks. Some really good sales talent out there. The best talent probably has been there for a while. It's been an amazing job market. And so what are your thoughts for companies that may not be hiring salespeople right now that want to keep conversations going for the time that they are hiring, maybe 2 months, 3 months down the line? Like, is it okay to post that job description? Is it okay for sales managers to reach out and have those conversations about, hey, we want to start the process now, but we're not hiring today? Like, what are your thoughts on that? I don't want to go too far off topic, but I think that's important for sales managers to know. And
I vote yes. I mean, I would do exactly what you just said, Ross. That's my quick take. And Ben, I want to hear what you have, your kind of take is. I don't think there's anything wrong with setting the table, to say, hey, look, this is what we're at. Because this is kind of an unprecedented free agent market too, right? And so even if you're not looking right now, I think planting the seed, I don't see any problem with that. I think actually a lot of people should take that advice. I think that's a smart way to play it.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think going back to what we've talked about with the sales process, I don't want to treat, candidates as a premium experience option, but to Cam's point earlier, right? People are going to remember what you do now, right? Everyone's going to reach out to them, and job boards are going to go crazy in, a few months, right? But if you're having those conversations now because you've done some research and you found these people, or you put it out there and you're upfront with, hey, we're not hiring today, but we are going to move the process. We want to start the process now. I think if you're transparent with it, and especially you're going to get top candidates, right? The people who are hungry to get back after it, people are going to continue the process with you. Those are going to be the top ones. And so when when there's 15 different companies putting a job description out or trying to hire, you already have your own pipeline of 10 or 20 people for those roles. So I agree with Jake. I think transparency is really important, but I think that, there's no reason not to, because to your point, are you never going to hire the role? No, you are eventually. So why not focus on it now? Just if there's anybody out there, feel free to hit up Ross and Cam as soon as we're done.
We love having
sure.
with 3 people, so we were happy to do it.
Nice. Jake, I'll just throw it back to you quickly on the curation, so to speak, of a digital presence, right? Again, we talked about it. It's not, let's connect with as many people as possible, right? It's great to connect with 1,200 new people who are decision makers, but then what? So I'd love to hear from you, then what, in your opinion, what do you do to start that conversation using what Cam mentioned earlier about adding value from the jump, not trying to, hey, this is the thing that I have to sell, but here's how I can help your business, or no, this is what's going on with you.
I think it's just adding value. I think it's adding value about what's happening in your community. What's not just about the Nets all the time. It's about what's happening in Brooklyn. What's happening here, regulations that are lifted, how other CEOs are tackling this. So I just think there's a lot of topics that may not 100% be related to the product all the time. I love Cam's example about the kids. That's awesome, right? I think it's looking for ways of being empathetic, right? The other word that everyone talks about. But okay, a CEO, it's a small business in Brooklyn. These guys are doing 50 million. What's this guy probably going to? He's in construction, So I think it's putting out the type of content that's going to be relevant to that audience is also kind of step 2, which is just putting out posts on a consistent basis, and not just all behind the scenes stuff, but also just as you build that network, just sharing relevant things and mixing in the Nets things as they become open, but also just becoming a trusted resource in business in general. That's a win-win, right? If Ross can be seen as someone who just gets business and people go to him and want to learn from him, that's a win-win. So I think it's mixing, being a little bit more diverse with the content to where it's not all team. It's also content that I just think is going to be helpful, or insights that I think will be helpful to my buyer. And I think there's a lot of teams that are starting to pick up on that too.
And Jake, there's nothing like a good laugh too, right? All of us have been on Zoom calls the last 10 plus weeks, and there are a plethora, I'm going to use an SAT word, a plethora of Zoom memes and SNL skits. And some of our guys have put it out there, and, you get a good LOL or a nice ha strand, that's big. It's just another creative way to connect we're all in this together type scenario. So
Yeah.
I like.
It's my hope is that down the line this starts to create not a totally separate sales process, sales cycle, but to understand how the digital process works within the regular sales cycle. I think right now, and my guy Clay is gonna change the ticketing world pretty soon here. Ask the question I want to get to, but as you guys look at the process that you have you curated with your team, or have you curated for yourself a digital sales process? Like, this is how I'm going to focus on LinkedIn. This is how I'm going to use Twitter for myself or to gather information. Is that a process that you have started? And is that something, if not, that you think is going to be necessary, or am I the only one?
You know, it's funny, we started having these conversations, Ross and I, maybe a week or two ago, like Zoom etiquette, right? So like
Totally.
there's quite a few companies that have come out and said, hey, like, you know, starting tomorrow, if you want to work home permanently, you could do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you might see more and more, especially in the tech space, companies adapt to that scenario, right? Whether their productivity's up, maybe they're saving some money on the office, or it just makes sense with the times, and they've been able to be equally as efficient via a Zoom call or whatever platform it is they're using. So we're gonna have to adapt, right? There's a lot we need to adapt to, right? Post-pandemic, you know, objections, et cetera, but specifically like running a meeting on a Zoom call, right? And little nitty gritty details, because that's what makes the difference, right? What is your background? What are you wearing? Is your desktop messy? Like, what windows do you have open, you know, when you're going through this conversation, right? Are you wearing pants? Like, you know, little things like that. Laugh, but at the end of the day, we're talking to business executives and we're asking them to spend a nice chunk of change on a very premium product. You know, we need to be ready for those things. So having that thought process going now, and creating some what if scenarios, right here. Another one that even came up earlier today in a mock, you know, training, mock meeting training we did, is we don't know when we're going back to the arena. Nobody does. Are we going to need to set up a virtual tour, right? We have virtual pieces and platforms to maximize, but what does that virtual experience look like, right? You know, we've got tools to do it, and we're starting to think through those conversations now, so that, you know, we're prepped and ready to go, because I think and this is just my opinion, I think it's going to be a part of our new norm, as everyone's referring to it. I would have to say so.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of teams, when they're building new premium spaces, they have those kind of event areas where it's like a mock of one of the suites, and you have that. I'm sure Brooklyn had that as you guys were building, but you know, why not have a virtual one, right? The 360 view exists, all of that. Why not?
Everybody gets a green screen. You get a green screen. Go to work.
So Ross, same sort of thought. Like, what is your view on the sales and the service side of how we use the digital aspects, the digital tools we have to make sure that again, it's not a totally new sales process, but it's something that bleeds into what we're already doing?
Yeah, I mean, nothing that hasn't been mentioned before, right? Knowing your client. I do think there's also the advantage now with all these Zooms. You know, when we had Jake and Laura come in a year ago, one of the big takeaways that I had was like, everybody would ask for a call, right? Like, can we jump on a call for 30 minutes? And Jake and Laura were like, no, like, why are you asking for a call to start? Like, you don't have to set up a meeting, but like, hey, I'm going to set up a video chat for 30 minutes, right? And our team started doing that right away. It's like, hey, like, you know what, they might be taken off guard that you just sent them an invite for the video call, and they may not even like, they might answer it as a call, and that's okay because your video is there and you still look good. Like, being in front of somebody in the video, and like, even at the, you know, when somebody's working from home and you see their kids, like, it does humanize us all a little bit. And I really think it actually helps us as sales and service professionals. It helps us just personalize that process, right? Like, at the end of the day, you're talking to somebody, some human on the other line. And when they see that, like, oh, you know, he's got 2 kids and he's struggling and his dog's barking in the background, it makes you, I think, want to do business with that person a little bit more than just that robotic call of like doing a needs analysis. So yeah. I think there are some advantages to that first video call that we wanted to do a year ago and was a little bit like foreign. And now it's totally cool. It's like jump on a video call for 15 minutes, no problem.
Yep. I agree. I think there's being able to use this, LinkedIn, other tools like that to be able to start the process, but to be able to do it in a more authentic way, I think is huge. Curious, before we go into sort of the last part, Clay asked a question. Given that sales is going to change on a per event revenue basis, do you guys see, and more for Ross and Cam, are you having conversations with your marketing team that their spend is going to go up to try and push this because the dollar value is going to be there?
Yeah, I don't know, what that spend for marketing is going to look like. I think it's still too early to tell, to be honest. But, it just has to be careful. It has to be the right message. It has to be on brand with whatever you're doing. I wish I could be more specific, but I think it's just too early to tell what that spend would look like.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say we're not going to come out of this and knowing that the amount of people in the arena might be lower. We're not right away going to try to make ourselves whole revenue wise by upping 2 or 3x the price of certain areas. So we shall see. But want to transition now to more of kind of an advice specific section. So Ross, start with you, right? I'm going to take you back to, was it East Rutherford? Is that where the New Jersey Nets were?
East Rutherford, started off first year, went to college for finance, thought I was going to, my senior year internship, I did like a high paid options trading internship where they got like, $30 an hour and they paid for my housing, UPenn, and then, boom, inside sales, 2009, New Jersey Nets start off 0-19 and end the year 12-70.
Nice. Well, I'm going to take you back there, right? Knowing what you know now, right? You want to get in the B2B space. You want to be able to talk to companies. You want to be in the boardroom. What are you doing right now? What are you doing first thing tomorrow morning to put yourself on that track?
Yeah, I'm reading books. The first thing I'm doing is I sent a list to my reps that like really want to know about it, but you have to read. And there's like a few finance books, a few business books that like, if you read those, that's you have a foundation. You can pretty much navigate your way through most conversations. And you know what? When somebody says something that you're talking to, it's okay to say, I don't know, right? Like, but at least you can say like, well, I saw this about this, but like, that's to the extent of my knowledge. Like the last thing you want to do is talk about something that you don't know about. It's like, it's okay to say, I don't know. Those words are actually, to me, I love when I'm interviewing somebody and they tell me I don't know the answer, because it shows they're self-aware. But the first thing I'm doing is I'm reading some business books, I'm reading some finance books, and I'm learning
recommendations?
About. I can get my little list out if you.
Yeah.
Can go. I have a solid list for you. That's probably the first thing I'm doing is I'm reading. And then number two is maybe the next steps after, you want to do well at your job, right? Like that's whatever your role is. Like if your role is to sell, like you got to be number one on the board. You got to be number two, number three, like you want to sell. I meet a lot of people that want to be managers right away, and they're like kind of middle of the pack sellers. And like, that's totally cool. And you can totally be a manager if you're a middle of the pack seller, but then you also have to do those extra things while doing your job, right? You can't just say, I want to be a manager, so I'm doing these tasks, but I'm going to not sell at the same time, right? You have to do those things. So I think, doing your role right, reading books, and then maybe lastly is latching on to one project if you do want to become a manager. And I'll let Cam talk about this, but like what I always wanted to do is try to find one thing that I thought the organization could do better, not like 10 things, and really implementing it, right? Like ideas are super easy. Everybody has ideas, but implementing that one idea and making it become a reality, even as a sales rep, like that gets noticed, and that can bring you to that next level.
Yeah. Cam, I'll come back to you. Jake, I'm going to take you back to the Thunderdome in St. Pete. You're sitting in that seat tomorrow. It's 2020. What is it that you're doing to get yourself to become, a top of the board B2B seller, or that future leader in the B2B space?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I had some natural tendencies. I was really lucky, actually. I did something very similar to Ross. I had a guy who was older than me who changed careers, and he turned me on to reading again. And so I started reading. There's some classic books then called Ice to Eskimos by this guy, John Spolstra. If you guys know, John Spolstra is the guy, he famously did like a vasectomy night at a minor league stadium. And so, I think that's on the you side, right? So you've got to be investing yourself, borrowing from everybody, again, and not trying to reinvent the wheel all the time. So I think that's like the personal development side. And now is a great time to do it. But what I did, whether I knew it or not, is I naturally found networks. So like some of my biggest like deals were with like, the St. Pete downtown partnership, where I knew with them, I could then get leverage to all these people and I could sell them 250 Yankees tickets when the Yankees came to town, right? Or the Red Sox, right? So I feel like now is a really important time, I think, to just take stock. The other thing that I would probably do if I was in that seat, and I did this when I was in that seat, is I'd look at the data from my past 1 or 2 years of sales, and maybe there's some trends, maybe there's some areas, maybe there's some pockets. So I've always been a relatively analytical person. And again, I broke our inbound system in Tampa because I did an analysis in my first year of sales, and it was this loop system. And I found these times when nobody called inbound. And so I didn't make any of my cold calls then. And I only called during that hour, and everyone on my team hated me, even though I showed them the data and they chose not to do it. So I think I would be looking retrospectively at my previous sales. Are there any trends in industries, things like that? These people that are coming inbound, like my brain immediately, when I hear Ross and Cam talk about that, my brain immediately goes, what industry are they in? And then me as a seller, I go, I'm going to go reach out to 500 people in that industry. So I think I would try to kind of read the trends outward, try to make those connections. I already talked about LinkedIn, but that would be my one piece of advice, is start to look for those pockets. And if there's 1 or 2 people saying that, and it's New York City, then there's 100 other people that I should go and talk to, and I'm going to go jump on that immediately.
Yeah. And just to jump on that, for me, just one piece is become a student of the game, right? One of the things I would always tell my team is you should know what's going on in your world. You should know what's going on with our team. You should know what's going on with our organization. You should know what's going on in our industry, but you should know what's going on in the world around you, right? If you aren't listening to, Wall Street Journal or Fox News or CNN or Street and Smiths, any of those kind of things, to understand what's going on, to Jake's point, that's how you find out about the newest industries or whatever it might be. One of the biggest sales I ever made was I was subscribed to Wall Street Journal, and I saw that energy companies were moving offices from Texas into New York to do more business development. And I was like, bam, found one. They had an office of 3 people they were going to build, but it was only 3 people. And I got them to do a full season suite lease because they knew it was coming, and I was the first one there. So make yourself a student of the game. But to close it out, Cam, Ross mentioned it, but you've been a rep, you've been a leader in a few different areas of the business. If you want to become a leader, what is it that you think people need to be doing right now?
Great question. And this has been awesome. So I appreciate you guys for the time today. I'll take you back to 2016. I went into Ross Grill's office as a group seller, and I said, hey, Ross, I really want to sell on your team. I want to sell suites. And I said, what do I got to do to get to that point? And Ross gave me some of the best advice I ever got. And his advice was sell some suites. So I did, and I took that to heart, and and he could attest. I was in his office once a week, just talking through strategy and reviewing my prospects and my funnels and my pipeline. And I guess the point I'm trying to make with that funny and actually realistic story is squeaky wheel is going to get the oil. Nobody's going to hand you anything, and doing the job before you have it is important. And then the last piece I would have to say is lead by example, right? First in, last out mentality. I live by the Ricky Bobby mentality. If you ain't first, you're last. I mean, Ross can attest. I've sold under him and now report directly to him as his director. But that's just, and again, to Ross's point, you could be a middle of the pack seller, but an incredible leader. If you have the ability to inspire, the ability to, you think about why you get out of bed every morning. And for me, I love seeing my guys succeed. Like I love when they have a big sale, come in and we ring the bell or we go out for beers, or, you see one of your guys get promoted and know that you were a part of that process. So to get to that point, squeaky wheel is going to get the oil. Are you in the ear of the inside sales manager? You making some, calls early on to some prospects or prospective, hires? Are you in Ross's office and our VPs and just talking about their journeys and how they got there, right? Because to a degree, there's a playbook of being a manager, right? You read books, you take on mentors and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you develop your own style. You really got to focus in on your strengths, play to your strengths, but understand that you're not perfect either. And, the rest of your team, you have to have this sense of the rest of the weaknesses that you have, your team's going to pick you up, right? So things that Ross is really good at, I'm not really good at, and that's why we complement each other, right? So understanding that early on as an aspiring seller is really, really important as well. So don't think you have all the answers, and it's okay not to have all the answers. Really focus in on your strengths, what you do really well, and how you can work with your team to fill in the blanks, if that makes any sense.
Love it. Well, Ross, Cam, Jake, I appreciate it. Going to throw out one last challenge for everyone. Whether you are in Fayetteville down with Arkansas, you're my boy Brian down in Gainesville with University of Florida, you're in Charlotte, all the people who are on here, you're up in New York. From today, what I want you to do, come find me on LinkedIn, send me a message with what the biggest issues that you're currently having, the biggest challenges in front of you right now. And Jake and I will do a free 30-minute session with you guys. Would love the chance to connect with everybody here, learning as much as what's going on in all these different areas. We have a lot of cross-league, cross-team stuff to share, but our own expertise to help kind of get you through it. So send me a message, LinkedIn, in the next 24 hours. We'll do a free 30-minute session. You can ask Cam, you can ask Ross. I wasn't there, but Jake will blow your mind. So just imagine with the both of us. But again, appreciate everybody's time. Thanks so much for joining us. Really looking forward to the next one. Have a great rest of the week and a good weekend. We'll see you guys soon.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.